our partners, of course, the Olof Palmes International Center, and the International Trade Union Confederation, who has, been a very important partner in this work on common security. We are at a point where we are moving a bit faster at this point, given that the world is actually needing for a process by which we can really pursue a way by which people can dialogue and continue to move towards a direction of peace. So welcome everyone. Good evening from the Philippines, and good afternoon and good morning for our friends from the different parts of the world. And we're happy and we are delighted and we're looking forward to this important process and important dialogue as we go through the different, inputs and listen and talk with each other until tomorrow. So thank you so much for coming, all of you from different directions.
And as Corazon said, I'm very happy with the cooperation we have had in the planning of this very important conference, together with the International Peace Bureau and the ITUC, the International Trade Union Confederation. And this is in a very timely moment when we are set to discuss these topics. Corazon and myself, we will moderate this first session we have now. But just before we do that, then I hand over to Jordania. I would like to just say a few remarks. First of all, the Olof Palmes International Center is the collected labor movements organization for international development cooperation in Sweden, and we of course work in the name of Olof Palme, who once about 40 years ago together with others on the global arena came up with a common security and approach, and this is something we will listen to in just a short while on the history on that, and then practical examples. I just read in the report that we released 2022, which was the celebration of 40 years, and in the end of that we do point to the future, and unfortunately all of those are actually very relevant and current. It's discussion about global warming as a threat, inequality as a threat, authoritarianism as a threat, shrinking space for democracy as a threat, and not at least the militarization of the world as a threat. So with that said, I think it's extremely timely to have this discussion now, and we are of course very happy to see so many distinguished participants in these meetings. So, but before we start our program, I would like to welcome Jordania from ITUC to say welcome to you all.
Muchas gracias, Oscar. Gracias, compañeros, compañeras, a toda la organización y en nombre de la Confederación Sindical Internacional. De verdad que es un gran honor poder darles la bienvenida a esta sesión previa a esta conferencia, esta importante conferencia llamada ¿Qué es la seguridad común? Decirles que la presencia activa de nuestra Confederación Sindical Internacional en este evento es parte integral de nuestros trabajos, siempre parte integral de las acciones de los trabajadores y de las trabajadoras. Y esta conexión nace incluso desde nuestras raíces, porque Nuestra lucha por la justicia social, por los derechos laborales y por la dignidad humana también es una lucha por la paz. Hemos compartido en diferentes escenarios nuestra visión alrededor de la paz. Decimos que la paz verdadera no es simplemente la ausencia de la guerra, sino la presencia de condiciones equitativas para todas las personas, la presencia del respeto de los derechos para todas las personas. Y desde sus inicios, los sindicatos hemos reconocido que las guerras suelen disputarse en beneficios de algunas élites burguesas y están a expensas de la clase trabajadora, de la clase obrera. Y esta es la que por lo general es enviada al frente de la batalla. Y hemos abogado por la paz desde el movimiento sindical. Nos hemos vinculado a todas las luchas que tienen que ver con la construcción de la paz y con el objetivo amplio de prevenir las guerras que tienen un impacto tan desproporcionado sobre la clase trabajadora. Desde la fundación de nuestra Confederación Sindical Internacional en el año 2006, la Confederación ha mantenido ese compromiso con firmeza y hemos promovido los derechos laborales y la paz en todas nuestras campañas y actividades globales. Hemos insistido en que no puede haber paz sin justicia social y que prevenir los conflictos debe ser parte fundamental de nuestra agenda. Por eso sabemos que las desigualdades, las condiciones laborales injustas y la exclusión son causas profundas de estos conflictos que vivimos. Por eso, al luchar por la igualdad económica, por los empleos dignos y por las políticas inclusivas, el sindicalismo también está construyendo paz. A lo largo de la historia, la implicación, el sumarse, el movimiento sindical sumarse a todas estas acciones ha sido clave. Incluso hemos tenido roles de mediación en diferentes momentos, de prevención de conflictos también y en reconstrucción después de estos conflictos. En el año 2022 es importante mencionar que en colaboración con el Centro Olof Palme y la Oficina Internacional por la Paz, la CCI presentó el informe sobre seguridad común. Esto fue el fruto de un trabajo en conjunto, así como lo es ahora, que hemos hecho este trabajo conjunto para poder llevar a cabo esta conferencia. Y de este trabajo en el 2022, pues sacamos una especie de visión global de más alto nivel, porque creamos estas iniciativas para poder responder a los riesgos de seguridad contemporáneos. Y solo han pasado 3 años a partir de esto, y como sabemos, el mundo ha cambiado. Y lamentablemente ha cambiado para peor. Los conflictos se han incrementado, la situación mundial, la gente, los pueblos, la clase trabajadora se ha visto impactada por estos conflictos. Y por eso hoy renovamos nuestro compromiso, reafirmamos, mejor dicho, nuestro compromiso y nos unimos en solidaridad con nuestras organizaciones hermanas para seguir organizando este tipo de espacios virtuales, presenciales, que nos permitan reflexionar y compartir también algunas visiones, pero sobre todo fortalecernos en este aspecto de la construcción de la paz. Esperamos que esta sesión sirva de inspiración, que nos llene de energía, que nos siga llenando de convicción para poder avanzar y seguir adelante, y que podamos seguir redoblando nuestros esfuerzos en esa construcción de un mundo que sea verdaderamente justo, pero que sobre todo reine la paz. Muchas gracias, compañeros y compañeras. Desde la Confederación Sindical Internacional vamos a seguir apoyando, fortaleciendo y siendo parte de este tipo de iniciativas en nombre de la paz. Un abrazo y muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Jordania, and I think we have welcomed you enough for everybody. We will now move on to the actual beginning of our session tonight.
Good day. Thank you for this opportunity. My task today is to trace the history of common security. I commend the IPB, the ITUC, and Olof Palmes for reigniting the powerful ideas for peace that common security brings. We persist in this endeavor. I could go back to the times of peace agreements from ancient Egypt to Immanuel Kant's perpetual peace of the 18th century, but the brief is to look at more contemporary times, to the last 50 years or so, and how common security contributed to a redefining of security. How today we can operationalize and build a common security agenda in the world that UN Secretary General has described as heading off the rails, with a record number of armed conflicts and a war in Europe with the illegal and warranted invasion of Ukraine by Russia. The other day, I received a message from the commune where I live. Normally, these messages concern village events. This message was different. It said a major situation could arise anywhere at any time. It advised where to seek shelter in case of a major situation. By the way, we know where to seek refuge. My neighbor, as many Swiss homes do, has a nuclear shelter. The note contained instructions as to how to be prepared. I was once a member of the Boys Brigade. Our motto was be prepared, but not for Armageddon, I thought. The instructions were clear. Have enough water, a battery-driven radio, candles, torches, a long list of food supplies, and plenty of cash. I thought this is what happens when common security thinking is abandoned in this world today. I recall the words of the UN Secretary General who said the world had a choice of breakdown or breakthrough. Breakdown is winning. I remembered how breakdown impacted my family story. My great-grandfather buried in a First World War cemetery in France. My mother, aged 10, in a Cardiff building during the Second World War Blitz, when a bomb pierced the roof and fell beside her and not exploding. Walking to school, seeing vapor traces in the sky and thinking these nuclear weapons are a long way from Cuba. Breakdown today as the doomsday clock is the closest to midnight it has ever been. Breakdown as war rages in Ukraine, genocide in Gaza, millions displaced from war and climate change, record military spending, rearmament in Europe and around the world, revanchism and revisionism in geopolitics, the UN Charter ignored, autocracy on the rise and assaults on democratic human and trade union rights, revised military doctrines that lower the threshold of nuclear weapon use and billions invested to make them more lethal. A chaotic world of disorder and conflict. These dangerous times oblige us to act. How to step back from the abyss. And this is where the rejuvenation of common security can give us hope that another world is possible. When I became part of the IPP family, I had a lot of learning to do. We're the oldest peace NGO, a Nobel laureate. It was important to try and understand where the world stood in terms of peace and the consequences of an emerging multipolar world and the talk of world reordering. Discovering that it was strategic competition between superpowers across all areas from economic, trade, military to nuclear weapons that defined these times. We all felt a responsibility to leverage our forces to reflect on how to turn the tide towards cooperation, multilateralism, interdependence, and peace to fulfill the UN Charter promise to end the scourge of war. Reflecting my lifelong experience and our union commitment to peace and social justice. Fortunately for me, an IPP board member introduced me to the idea of common security and advised me to get hold of the 1982 Palme Commission report on common security. It was symptomatic that it took me an age to get hold of a copy of the report of the Independent Commission on Disarmament and Security Issues. We noted that 2022 marked the 40th anniversary of its publication and that the IPB and friends should mark the event. I met Anna Sundström, Secretary General of the Olof Palmes Center, and with the ITUC on board, and without any fuss, I might add, we established our own high-level 2022 Global Commission on Common Security. But where did this common security journey begin? Our 2022 report for our shared future was preceded by the original 1982 Palme report, Common Security, A Blueprint for Survival, which itself was influenced by the Brandt Report of 1980 on North-South, a program for survival. The state of the world today has a disturbing resonance with the tensions of the Cold War confrontations over 50 years ago. Geopolitical fractures, resurgent militarism, exploding military expenditure, nuclear threats, and failing global peace architecture. How did these reports on common security redefine security? The 1982 Palme report captures this best, I think. In his introduction, Olof Palme wrote, "We are totally agreed that there is no such thing as a nuclear war that can be won. Different warfighting doctrines are therefore a grave threat to humanity. The doctrine of deterrence offers very fragile protection indeed against the horrors of nuclear war. He went on, it is therefore of paramount importance to replace the doctrine of mutual deterrence. Our alternative is common security. There can be no hope of victory in a nuclear war. The two sides would be united in suffering and destruction. They can only survive together. They must achieve security not against the adversary, but together with him. International security must rest on a commitment to joint survival rather than the threat of mutual destruction. On the basis that cooperation between adversaries was essential, the Palme Commission agreed recommendations to achieve arms limitation and disarmament to end Cold War tensions and militarization. Palme saw the need for balanced and negotiated reduction in arms to promote a downward spiral in armaments, recognizing that the long-term goal in the promotion of peace must be general and complete disarmament. Looking back through time, let me add that the Brandt report was pivotal. The former German Chancellor framed security not as a zero-sum game, but as a shared responsibility. He introduced a broader concept of security that went beyond military defense. Brandt stressed that human security should include addressing hunger, disease, poverty, environmental degradation, as much as the dangers of armed conflict. Economic justice as security, stating that the South cannot grow without the North, and the North cannot prosper without the South. Brandt stressed the interdependence of nations, the requirement for peace through collective security, and to take thinking beyond traditional military definitions. The 1982 Palme Commission report took these concepts further. The Palme Commission was global in its composition, including the USA, Cyrus Vance, and the Soviet Union, Georgy Arbatov, the latter becoming a close advisor to Gorbachev at the time of Perestroika and Glasnost. The Commission met at the height of the Cold War. NATO and the Warsaw Pact, with 1 million-strong armies, over 64,000 nuclear weapons, with nuclear weapons in Western Europe. How to find a path to cooperation in the most least likely of contexts. The Palme Commission began with outlining principles of common security. Here are some. All nations have a legitimate right to security, they wrote. Military force is not a legitimate instrument for resolving disputes between nations. Restraint is necessary in expressions of national policy, and security cannot be attained through military superiority. Reductions in and qualitative limitations of armaments are necessary for common security. To achieve a downward spiral, the report has 38 pages devoted to elements of a framework for arms control and disarmament. A few standouts. A broad program to reduce the nuclear threat, including major reductions in all types of strategic nuclear systems. The establishment of a battlefield nuclear weapon-free zone in Europe, a chemical weapon-free zone in Europe, a negotiated agreement on mutual force reductions leading to a guaranteed approximate parity in conventional forces in Europe, comprehensive test ban treaty, agreements to limit military activities in space. And above all, the report emphasized that common security applies with great force to the global South. In short, there was to be no security through military superiority. Adversaries were required to work on confidence building and mutual verification methods with a commitment to human security. What impact did the report have? 50 years ago, superpower relations were at rock bottom. A breakthrough came with the coming to power of Gorbachev, and dare I say it, a common security conversion from Ronald Reagan after his policy to rearm and build US military power. USA and Soviet summits in Geneva in 1985 and the Reykjavik White House summit in 1986. Between 1985 and 1987, they exchanged 33 letters, and one result was a common security INF treaty, the only such treaty to eliminate an entire category of nuclear weapons. In a sign of today's times, the US formally withdrew from the treaty in 2019, having both suspended their treaty obligations that year. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the Soviet Union in 1991 resulted in a whole series of common security-inspired initiatives. Security was, in fact, redefined. A treaty to reduce and limit conventional military forces in Europe. A Paris Charter for a New Europe, adopted at the second summit of the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe. An Open Skies Treaty, the Petersburg Declaration expanding the scope of European security cooperation, the Vienna document on a series of confidence building and security building measures. These common collective security measures laid the groundwork for a new security architecture in Europe and worldwide. However, this period's legacy does bring questions as to whether they went far enough, as the times brought NATO expansion to the east and seeds of future tension sown. It would be remiss of me not to mention that this year is the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Declaration, itself built on common security ideas integral to its 10-point decalogue. It led to new institution building with the CSCE and its transformation to the OSCE in 1990, all consistent with Palme's logic of security with the adversary. The OSCE does tremendous work, but its promise is still to be fulfilled. And I think we need to take a fresh look at its role and how to enhance its authority. Returning to the 1982 report, a key dimension was the Palme call to action to civil society. Palme referred to the popular and political awakening that had created a new public concern with peace and security. People no longer saw nuclear war as something distant and unreal. Palme encouraged civil society to maintain momentum and for policymakers not to disappoint people's hopes and efforts to transform their longing for peace into policy for peace. In fact, without the pressure of the street, of unions and civil society, Palme said, he doubted if governments would shift thinking. Mobilize, he said, and today mobilize we must. It was this Palme legacy to redefine security that prompted the three hosts of today to establish a global commission in 2022, not just to revisit, but to rejuvenate, expand, and apply common security to a world facing new and diverse challenges from climate change, pandemics, rising inequality, and regional conflicts. Our work was just concluding when the Russian invasion of Ukraine took place. We condemned it and demanded Russian withdrawal. The carnage continues. The devastating human cost of war, a constant reminder that we need to find a path to peace and go beyond simple EU rearmament. The 2022 report outlines the new existential threats to humanity. It identifies the common security risks today, outlines updated common security principles, and has a plan of action outlined over 4 things with 25 action points. In brief, to strengthen the global peace architecture, reaffirming the UN Charter and international reform and reforming the Security Council. For a strong regional dimension, to promote regional common security principles, a global ceasefire, a new Green Deal to fight climate change, a new peace dividend with a call for a special General Assembly on disarmament to reduce military expenditure by 2% a year, promoting a new social contract, and to revitalize nuclear arms control and disarmament, calling on states to sign and ratify the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and to fulfill NPT commitments, and for policies to deal with new military technologies and outer space weapons. We made a strong call, stronger than 1982, for the involvement of women in peace processes and negotiations, and including indigenous peoples is a critical element to unlock obstacles to peace. Many of these ideas were pursued in the UN Pact for the Future, and particularly the interconnectedness of threats and risk prevention and UN reform. Let us assume for a moment, against the odds, that common security thinking prevails. How can it help us build our shared future? The time has come for new symmetry between USA and China, USA and Russia. It is time. Their power rivalries are the fault line in global politics today. How to operationalize common security thinking? It's a challenge that faces this seminar. It could be structured around several pillars: rebuilding trust through a structured dialogue, focusing on de-escalation, conflict resolution, and crisis management, arms control and disarmament, renewed efforts, updating existing treaties, exploration of new agreements, limiting conventional and nuclear forces, transparency in military exercises, joint conflict resolution mechanisms, cybersecurity cooperation, taking the brand lead, develop economic cooperation and fair trade and opportunities. It's a far cry from the tariff wars of today. Strengthening international norms and institutions, respect for international law from the UN Charter to the Helsinki Final Act, ensuring accountability for violations of sovereignty and territorial integrity, empowering international organizations such as the PSCE in conflict prevention, mediation, and post-conflict reconstruction. Building a regional common security dimension, promoting democracy and human rights. In closing, I thank you for this opportunity, and I apologize for some of the superficiality of my analysis, but I've tried to paint a big picture here. We remain convinced that the idea of common security remains relevant in today's world. Our interdependent world requires common security cooperation to prevent us from heading off the rails. The erosion of multilateralism requires common security thinking to rebuild it. Its commitment to human security addresses the root causes of conflict. The abiding message of addressing existential threats through cooperation, such as climate change, will take us a step back from the abyss we face. My hope is in these 2 days we discuss how a regional and global architecture for peace and security can emerge once again. There will be work to do, and let's continue these IPB, ITUC, Olof Palme efforts. It's a new beginning, not the end to our historical mandate for peace. I hope together we can write a new chapter in the common security story. Who knows? If we can make that breakthrough, the note I received from the village will remain unused in the bottom drawer of our basement cupboard, and the neighbor's bunker will remain redundant. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, with that said, thank you, Philip Jennings, for this very extensive historical overview of what we have accomplished. The last meeting we had 2 years ago, and also all the way back to the work of the common security work led by Olof Palme at the time. Now we're going to go from history, when we have set the stage, we're going to go over to some practical examples on how common security can be used and handled in our time of living. And I'm very happy to first introduce my dear friend and colleague Omar Farouk Osman from Somali, who is the General Secretary of FESTU, the Federation of Somali Trade Unions. So Omar, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, my brother Oscar. It has been a while, and it's good to see you, despite being virtual. And I really appreciate for the opportunity to join today's discussion, which is very important. And distinguished colleagues, fellow trade unionists and friends in the struggle for peace and justice. Like Oscar said, I'm from Somalia, and I bring you warm greetings from this country where the concept of security is not just debated in academic halls or policy seminaries or forums, but actively pursued in the streets, in the workplaces, fields, and homes of ordinary people striving to overcome daily insecurity challenges. Somalia and across the Horn of Africa, we have known conflict not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality. Our people, workers, their families, their communities have endured decades of violence, political instability, economic collapse, and social disintegration. The conflicts have been raging not only in my country, but throughout the entire region of the Horn of Africa that have primarily targeted workers, causing them to lose their jobs, income, and livelihoods. These warring sides have also forced them to become internally displaced or even refugees. Yet these dark realities, trade unionists have remained a beacon of hope, a force of recognition, and a resilient voice for dignity. I wanted to recognize our colleagues in Sudan who are facing the most extreme insecurity, where the conflict between the armed forces and the RSF have costed the life of many workers, their families and communities, the crisis in South Sudan, the crisis in Ethiopia, and of course, the situation in my country that has all been known as a bad news when it comes to conflict and crisis. The Horn of Africa is the worst region in terms of peace and stability when you talk about across the 5 regions of Africa. My National Trade Union Confederation, FESTU, was established in the year 2010, at a time when Somalia did not have a fully functioning government. Its founding purpose was to protect the rights and safety and security of the workers who were being killed, extorted, raped, and abused by armed men during a period of severe crisis and lawlessness caused by the civil war. It is precisely this reality that brings me here to speak about common security in practice. For us in Somalia and in the Horn of Africa, common security is not just a slogan or a theme to be debated. It is the only way forward. Common security, as we understand it, means recognizing that security of a worker in Mogadishu is tied to the security of a herder in Khartoum, a teacher in Addis Ababa, or a farmer in Asmara. It means understanding that no country, no community, no individual can be truly safe unless we are all. From the perspective of Somali trade unionists, our role in advancing common security is both deeply practical and morally rooted. I wish to share with you 4 ways in which we are contributing to peace and security across the Horn of Africa region. First, we are rebuilding social trust through collective voice. In a fragmented society where institutions have collapsed and state authority is often weak or contested, trade unionists offer a rare and genuine space for solidarity. In Somalia, we bring together workers across clan lines or tribes, across economic sectors, and across federal member states or regions. We are forging unity and national identity where division has taken root through collective bargaining, worker assemblies, and national reconciliation efforts, and labor rights advocacy. We promote dialogue over violence and negotiation over confrontation. Second, we fight the structured causes of insecurity, poverty, unemployment, inequality. These are not just economic problems. They are the triggers of conflict. When workers are hungry, unemployed, and excluded from decision-making, they are vulnerable to radicalization and being used as tools in armed conflict, and sometimes in criminal activities by terrorist organizations. We believe that promoting decent work is promoting peace. Terrorism and violent extremism like we see in Somalia and in the Horn of Africa region are exploiting and are flourishing in a decent work deficit. Therefore, the protection of labor rights not only ensures human security, but also serves as the foundation for the creation of a viable working life. Our work, whether advocating for peace building, campaigning against child labor, or pushing for access to education, directly contributes to addressing the root causes of instability. Third, we empower women and youth as agents for peace and stability. Our unionists are actively working to dismantle the barriers that prevent women and young people from taking their rightful place in society and in peace-building efforts. Because when women's voices are ignored, peace is incomplete. When the energy and hope of young people are left untapped, conflict festers. Through training programs, mentorship, leadership development, we are preparing a new generation of Somali peace builders grounded in solidarity, equality, and justice. Fourth, we are engaging in democratic governance and social dialogue. Trade unionists are not only social partners. We are political actors in the truest sense. We engage governments, employers, and civil society to push for policies that uphold human rights, transparency, and public accountability. We are at the forefront of campaigning democratic laws. I want to stress the word democratic laws because we believe that laws can also be in a way that are not democratic, that protect journalists, that protect the workers, that protect the civil and political rights of the people, that protect women against the sexual and gender-based violence, that end impunity. that secure workers' welfare and promote social protection. We believe peace cannot be imposed through militarization or armed confrontation. It must be negotiated through inclusive dialogue. And as trade unionists, we are in the strongest institutional bridge between the power and the people, and the means to social dialogue help us to bring peace and conflict resolution in our communities. Comrades, friends, let me be clear. The peace we seek is not just the silence of guns, like the African Union repeatedly says. It is the presence of justice. It is the ability for a young worker to dream of a future without fear. It is a society where the dignity of labor is honored, where resources are shared fairly, and where no voice is silenced because of who they are or where they come from. This is why common security resonates with us. It speaks our language. It reflects our aspirations. And I say to all of us gathered here, if we are serious about redefining security in the 21st century, we must center the voices of the working people, who constitute the majority of the population. We must invest in trade unions as agents of peace and security. We must not merely consult mass membership-based organizations like the organized labor. We must empower them. This is not only something that I am saying here today, but also the exact words that I told them. The 15 members of the African Union Peace and Security Council during their recent visit in Mogadishu, when they met the trade unions. Let me conclude with the words of Olof Palmes, that we all know and hail. Security cannot be founded on armed strength, but on a mutual respect and shared responsibility. We in the Somali trade unionists, and we share with our sister federationists in the 5 Horn of Africa countries, we are doing our part to build a shared responsibility for peace and security. We are not waiting the politicians to serve us. We are not waiting the politicians to impose peace and security in our neighborhoods. We invite all actors, governments, peaceful movements, employers, and allies to work with us, not just in solidarity, but in a shared humanity. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Omar. It's a great intervention you do, and I do all the fantastic work you do in Somalia. So thank you for that. And just a quick reminder that we do have a Q&A session after this first sessions where we have the possibility to ask questions. With that said, I move on to next speaker. I'm happy to give the word to Christian Ricardo Wittmann, who is a professor at the University of Pampa. So we're moving from Somalia to Brazil with just a blink of an eye. You're also active at the CELAC, who is the Latin American Human Security Network. So please, the floor is yours.
I'm very grateful to the International Peace Bureau for inviting me to share some perspective on peace and security, of course, from my region, from Latin America. I would like also to thank all the interpreters who are making possible the communication today. So thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias. Merci beaucoup. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to reflect on the concept of common security based, of course, on examples in Latin America. This is not as a theoretical aspiration, but as real as necessary approach to addressing today's complex global threats, as we just hear from other speakers. My understanding, let's see if the presentation, so you can already go to the second slide. Yeah. So my understanding is that no nation can achieve security by itself in an interconnected world. True peace and stability depend on mutual respect, cooperation, transparency, and trust, not domination or isolation. We always need to pursue build bridge instead of walls. If we remember the current U.S. president in his first mandate, he loved walls, but we need to build bridges. And while this idea often sounds idealistic, there are practical, concrete examples where common security has guided successful international action. Today, I want to share two of them with you, both from Latin America, a region that, despite many political and economic challenges, has also been home to remarkable achievements in disarmament, peace building, and regional trust. My first example is the Treaty of Tlatelolco. It comes from the 60s. It was signed in 1967. In terms of nuclear disarmament, this is a well-known example. This treaty established the first nuclear weapon-free zone in a densely populated region. All of Latin American and Caribbean countries, in this treaty, we have actually 33 states parties. At the height of Cold War, just a few years after Cuban Missile Crisis, Latin American nations decided to take a different path. Instead of entering into a nuclear competition, they collectively banned nuclear weapons from the region. The diplomatic process led by the Mexican ambassador Alfonso Garcia Robles created the first treaty banning nuclear weapons in a populated area. It's a huge example, as we have today, the treaty, the multilateral treaty, the UN treaty banning the, nuclear weapons from 2017. This wasn't just symbolic. The treaty includes binding obligations. The states cannot test, develop, acquire, store, or deploy nuclear weapons. The region established a permanent body based in Mexico City, in La Ciudad de Mexico, OPANAL, the Agency for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in Latin America and Caribbean, in order to verify compliance and facilitate cooperation among states. All 33 countries in the region are now parties to the treaty, making Latin America and the Caribbean one of the world's largest and most successful nuclear weapon-free zone. This achievement is a classic case of common security in practice. It shows how mutual reassurance and shared legal commitments can help build peace, even in geopolitical tense moments. The second example is more specific, but equally powerful. The creation of ABAC, which is thanks for following this photo between both presidents. The ABAC, the Brazilian Argentine Agency for Accounting and Control of Nuclear Materials. This model is unique and is not commented on in international forums as it should be. This is not a consequence of disarmament, of only a disarmament approach, but also an economic perspective of integration of the now called Mercosur. Brazil and Argentina developed advanced nuclear programs during the 70s and the 80s. The same time, actually, both societies face the horrific consequences of its dictatorship by the military group. And for many years, there was a degree of rivalry, and suspicion between the two. Each feared that the other might be pursuing a military nuclear option. By then, in the early 90s, something remarkable happened. This was not just due to the friendship between the presidents Sarney and Alfonsín from Brazil and Argentina, and you can see them both in the picture with the Iguazu Falls at the back, but also because of the end of the dictatorship period when democracy prevailed. Through sustainable political dialogue, democratic transitions, and the growing recognition of shared interests, the two countries choose cooperation over competition. If you can just change the slide, Sean, for the next one. Yeah. In the 90s, they created the Mercosur, the dialogues between Brazil and Argentina created not just the ABAC, but also the Mercosur. In 1991, they created the ABAC, the world's first and only, the unique body, a bilateral nuclear safeguards agency. Its mission is to verify nuclear materials in both countries are used exclusively in peaceful purposes. In conducts joint inspections, maintains shared databases, and works in partnership with the International Agency on Atomic Energy. So this specific body based in Rio has a lot to do with let's say compliance between both states with this international disarmament obligations. This agency is not only a technical tool, but it's a symbol of mutual trust. And you can change to the next slide, please. And it laid on the foundation of board integration efforts, including the depending of Mercosur, the regional trade bloc that promotes peaceful cooperation and democratic stability among South American states. While today there are higher degrees of rivalry, it remains only on soccer fields. And in the answer to the question of which player, Pelé or Maradona, was the best soccer player in history. What these two cases teach us, they show that common security works best when it's rooted in dialogue, transparency, and institutional mechanisms that give meaning to promises. Both the Treaty of Tlatelolco and ABAC reflect the collective choice to prioritize peace, even in environments shaped by historical tensions, inequality, and external pressures. More importantly, they show that disarmament and cooperation are not just for the global north. On the contrary, Latin America has offered global leadership in developing real functioning models of common security. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you today. Muchísimas gracias. Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much, Christian. Very interesting, and this sharing of practical example is it's very important to see that we actually can create common security in real life. Now I will turn to Martin Shugongo, who is the Secretary General for the International Parliamentarian Union. He will address us via a recorded message. So please.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, peace and security are at the heart of the IPU's mission. While a world without conflict remains an ideal to which we all aspire, redefining our understanding of security is a crucial step towards lasting peace. Today's escalating global tensions, renewed geopolitical rivalries, and rising instability are partly the result of a narrow and outdated understanding of the concept of security. When security is seen primarily in military terms, it leads to increased arms spending, fuels the arms race, and perpetuates nuclear deterrence as a valid basis for stability. When security is defined in confrontational terms, it undermines trust between nations and fosters a zero-sum dynamic of winners and losers that makes peace a contested goal rather than a shared endeavor. And when security is treated as the sole prerogative of the executive, democratic oversight is sidelined, leaving little room for inclusive debate or alternative visions. True security must serve people and guarantee freedom from fear, oppression, and violence. It means more than the absence of war and requires the active, conscious pursuit of peace through justice, solidarity, and cooperation. This is the essence of common security, a collective, inclusive approach to global challenges that elevates the voices of civil society, women, youth, and marginalized communities. In this effort, parliaments and parliamentarians have a key role to play. As democratic representatives of the people, they bring public concerns into security debates, promote transparency and accountability in defense and foreign policy, and advocate for diplomacy and cooperation over militarization. They help connect national priorities with global responsibilities. This vision guides the IPU's work. Through our recent publication, Human Security and Common Security to Build Peace, hundreds of members of parliament have started to rethink security in ways that better reflect the realities and hopes of the people they represent. They are championing approaches that prioritize dialogue, social justice, and long-term peace over fear and force. As you gather for the 2025 Common Security Conference, I encourage you to keep building momentum for this movement. Bold, collective thinking is needed to redefine security for our time. From where I stand, I can assure you parliamentarians will be at the table, not just to listen, but to act. I wish you a fruitful and inspiring conference, and I count on your continued support to advance common security as a meaningful alternative to militarization. Thank you.
Secretary General Martin Chungong of the IPU. Now we move on to the next part of our program, I would say. And we have for this segment on the collective security and international solidarity in the UN's new agenda for peace. We have Cecilia M. Bailet, UN independent expert on human rights and international solidarity. So, Cecilia, please.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute honor to be here, and I'm very inspired by the prior speakers. I was asked to give an overview of the contribution of a new agenda for peace in light of the current work on international solidarity. So it was an absolute joy to go through the document. The UN Secretary General set forth that war is always a choice, to resort to arms instead of dialogue, coercion instead of negotiation, imposition instead of persuasion. And therefore lies our greatest prospect, for if war is a choice, peace can be too. So the Secretary General then describes international solidarity as the foundation for cooperation within and between nations, civil society, and non-state actors to enable action for peace. And he's calling for a mindful commitment to the pursuit of peace as the aim of common security. Instead, according to Article 3, of the revised draft declaration on international solidarity, one of the objectives of international solidarity is precisely to create an enabling environment for engendering trust and mutual respect, to foster peace and security, to promote early response and prevention of conflict, to provide humanitarian assistance, and to engage in peace building. Nevertheless, we see the current shift by governments towards rearmament and securitization of societies is in response to actual and threats of violation of negative peace, addressing the territorial integrity of countries ranging from Ukraine to Panama and Greenland. And this has dominated the attention of the international community. The liberal multilateral system is shaken, and there is concern that a turn towards an authoritarian-dominated multipolarity lives uncertain which values will found that system. So there's an urgency for the international community to consciously choose to strengthen international solidarity for peace processes, investing in diplomacy, trust-building mechanisms, and mutual respect among all peoples of different backgrounds and traditions to tackle global challenges in the interest of safeguarding future generations. So I've witnessed a curious trend is the marginalization of peace as a value and a foundation for policy. I see policymakers favor terms such as conflict management, deflecting attention away from the explicit allegiance to the very real sequential obligation of peaceful dispute resolution that is identified in Article 33 of the UN Charter. Parties shall, first of all, seek a solution by negotiation, inquiry, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement, resort to regional agencies or arrangements, or other peaceful means of their own choice. It's notable that international solidarity actually requires a sequential procedure of exhaustion of peaceful dispute resolution mechanisms before the use of force. So I see that there is a real need to strengthen the voice of youth within collective peace and security. We see that governments are trying to recruit more youth for military training. And so there's a real need to recruit more youth for bridge building between communities domestically and between different nations. We can choose to support peace and solidarity education for youth. As suggested in a new agenda for peace, states are encouraged to facilitate the participation of youth in governance, specifically noting that the youth, peace, and security agenda must be institutionalized and funded. And it's notable that the revised draft declaration on international solidarity, Article 7.4, sets forth that states agree to take appropriate, transparent, and inclusive action to ensure the active, free, and meaningful participation of all individuals and peoples, including younger generations, in decision-making processes at the national, bilateral, regional, and international levels on matters that affect their enjoyment of solidarity. So I created, if I can share to show you, I created this solidarity map. Can you see this? Yes? And I created this because I saw that they have something called the ACLED, which shows you all the conflicts in the world and gives you a very cynical view of the state of the world because it tells you how many people have died in the latest terrorist attack. And I realized that youth today are, of course, having a severe crisis where they feel hopeless. They feel there's no point in engaging because all of the media is dominated by visions of violence. This map, it invites civil society groups to register and to show how they engage in actions that are promoting peace, human rights, protection of the environment. So I invite all the groups here to register and post your actions to give young people hope. In order to see that it is possible to engage in peace, that there is some way of contributing in a positive way. So I think that youth need to be educated in both human rights and humanitarian law. And I'm really concerned about the fragility of the principle of humanity and the lack of dissemination of its fundamental role within humanitarian law. I see Fukuoka-style narratives are grounding an actual retreat from the existing normative humanitarian regulation of armed conflict. And this is in part in response to the brutal violations conducted with impunity on the battlefield in Ukraine. So the recent announcement of withdrawal by Poland, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania from the anti-personnel mine ban treaty is definitely a step backwards, away from the evolution of a customary practice to eliminate anti-personnel mines mines. And it obviously ignores the alternative options of surveillance drones and precision weapons. The withdrawal from this treaty is questionable because we know that the treaty allows for anti-vehicle mines and command detonated mines. So there's no real need to withdraw from this, not to mention that these states will continue to be held accountable under customary international humanitarian law because we know that the anti-personnel mines have a large risk of having indiscriminate effects. So another concern is that, as mentioned in the previous speakers, is that the contemporary security risks include climate change and global inequality and transnational crime and terrorism and health pandemics. All of these things require cooperation with non-state actors to identify preventive and responsive strategies that would actually require us to halt or reverse the current significant transfers of resources away from healthcare and education to traditional defense. I really call on UN Women to engage, and you can actually trace the cutting of the health budgets in women's health and the cutting of the educational budgets. All of the funds that are going into defense are being cut from those programs. And so therefore, countries such as I am in Norway, we usually rank at the very top of women's rights. If you would create indicators where you would measure the defunding of women's health, perhaps we would actually have to drop in our rankings because of the money being turned over to militarization. So the draft declaration on international solidarity has very clear paragraphs on both preventive and responsive actions, and this would provide a good framework for actually looking at the policies. And I want to underscore that the concept of a feminist foreign policy that had been adopted by countries like Germany and Sweden right now are very much under threat, and we have to have a discussion on what it means to walk so far away from feminist foreign policies. So the majority of political violence is rooted in systemic unequal societies in which many groups of people are denied an adequate standard of living or participation in civic life based on their exclusion from public goods such as food, water, medicine, healthcare, housing, education, or adequate jobs. And this may be due to their religion, minority status, ethnicity, race, gender, or other social group. And the focus on interstate warfare ignores the very real situation of internal polarization that's dividing societies and fomenting violence. The aspiration of peace requires a sustained effort to remedy structural inequalities and discrimination within and between countries. And the UN Declaration on the Right to Peace sets forth a soft obligation upon states to implement positive peace in order to guarantee both domestic and international peace. It sets forth that states should respect, implement, and promote equality and non-discrimination, justice and the rule of law, and guarantee from freedom from fear and want as a means to build peace within and between societies. So I think initiatives to promote global public investment programs are very much in keeping with this perspective. Societies that guarantee adequate standard of living, including food, water, housing, medicine, and education to all people are actually reducing the risk of violence. And so positive peace is a form of common security. And it really is time to implement the Secretary General's call for the construction of a new era of multilateral cooperation based on international solidarity. He stated, "A community of nations must be underpinned by a sense of fellowship that recognizes a collective duty to redress injustices and support those in need." And I think this is the most sustainable road to peace and common security. And I look forward to collaborating with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for this very interesting intervention and on the UN's new agenda for peace. I'm sure we will come back to that. Now, our two last speakers for this session before we open up for question and answer, operated by Sean and Danielle. I would like to first introduce Frans Dahon Lee, who is the director of Trans Education for Peace Institute in South Korea, the Peace MOMO. So Francis, please, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you, everyone. I'm delighted to be part of this very important discussion and exchange of vision and practical measures I'll be speaking on the one of the reports on common security produced from this side of the world, East Asia, Indo-Pacific, etc. I hope everybody can see. So
Yes.
the discussion to produce this report focusing on the Indo-Pacific region began in the year 2022. That's when the war in Ukraine started, and that's when Burmese military took power again and began killing people again. And that's when the rise of the far-right movement uh, 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 surged in some of the Northeast Asian countries, and South Korea suffered with some extremist politicians coming into power. And then confrontational politics began to surge. And then from that point on, we began to see almost a daily exercise and confrontation between US forces and Chinese forces over Taiwan Strait, and the tension began to rise very sharply in the Korean Peninsula, and there were more activities on the South China Sea, and major NATO forces began to do monthly, yearly military exercises with Japan, with South Korea, and the US in the whole Indo-Pacific region. Australia and New Zealand also came into the scene in building up military forces. And obviously, their common target was China and Russia in this part of the world. That's when uh, some of us in IPB and Peace Momo, my group, and Campaign for Peace and Disarmament and Common Security, based in the US, we began to invite authors and speakers to organize dozen webinars. Uh, what are the new characteristics of this recent situation developed in the Indo-Pacific region? And these webinars took place over the time of 2 years. And then finally, 9 authors came from 7 different countries to produce the first report on the topic of common security from Indo-Pacific region. And these are some of the subtitles. So it's divided into 10 or so chapters. We try to tackle with different hotspots and also common features. And then one of the key feature of this report is that we had a very clear focus on the role of small states vis-a-vis the rise of multilateralism or the importance of multilateralism, and also in critique of the hegemonic politics hidden in the national security paradigm. We try to counter that with a very strong focus on the role of small states. And also we try to see the connection between the climate change and the contribution of the rise of militarism and military exercises to the climate crisis. So this is the breakdown chapters of that report. And I'd like to highlight a key points. The first point of this report is that even though it's not very widely reported outside the region, except the crisis in Taiwan Strait, there is a common situation that the danger or the possible military clash, the probabilities are escalating very fast in all different hotspots. And these hotspots are very closely and structurally connected. So what I mean by different hotspots is that one obvious hotspot is the Korean Peninsula confrontation between 2 Koreas, but that also involves China and the US and Japan, and also many of the NATO forces there. And the hotspot, another one is Taiwan Strait. And year 2022 to 2024, there was almost weekly, semi-confrontation between 2 major forces, the US and China forces over the sea and in the air. And the major powers who are playing this confrontation are all nuclear powers. We have India coming in, Pakistan and North Korea as nuclear power. And there is a very heavy stockpile of weapon-grade nuclear materials in many other countries at the same time. Those countries have technology and capital to invest in nuclear weapons. And the rise of the far-right politics in some of the countries like South Korea also means the rise of the discussion and politics in favor of having nuclear weapons. And I'm sitting in South Korea and I see weekly the danger of this new discussions that didn't happen even during the Cold War time to nuclear arm the country. So these indicators all show to the direction that this region is a potential spot of global confrontation. The major forces, major countries, and the highest investment in military and the top military technologies. And for example, these countries that I mentioned, they excel and they lead the artificial intelligence integrated military technology, robot-based weaponization, and the integration of outer space intelligence and militarization into land, air, and sea. So one major argument of this report is that there is a fantasy that when a military crisis comes up, people and movement tend to look at it as their own local issues. But these crises are globally and regionally interconnected hotspots. And they are very closely to many of the crises that we discuss more often, such as climate crisis and the shrinking space of democratic space, and the marginalization of small states in major international relations, which is an hindrance to multilateralism. So obviously, because of this analysis, the report calls for the need of security paradigm shift from confrontational competition, and common security is both obvious and viable alternative. But I also would like to highlight that the vision of common security and the actual discussion of common security in the national parliaments and in the public are very weak in this region. This region is full of countries which are caught, which are locked in the paradigm of national security, and security is always competition, and security is always militarization. Very narrow idea of security. So Indo-Pacific region is one of the prominent regions where security dilemma is equipped with new arms race, and militarization has clearly turned to a new phase, and there's no proper analysis of this new phase of militarization starting from, spreading from East Asia and Indo-Pacific. And the confrontational politics has become daily, and disarmament and diplomacy for disarmament and international pressure for disarmament is weakest in the region. And this is the background of the report, and I'd like to invite your utmost interest and reading of this report. And finally, my point of sharing the information is that this report comes with 8 vital recommendations, which not only focuses on the institutional politics and government policies, but also these recommendations call for fundamental changes of civil society reactions and social movement agenda setting, especially given the fact that in many of the countries in the region, security, whether common security or national security, this agenda is usually considered in the narrow expertise of peace movement and peace-oriented politicians alone. And I think this narrowness should be fundamentally changed. So the recommendations come from we need to commit to common security diplomacy. Second, we need to reduce tensions in the Taiwan Strait and in the Korean Peninsula and South China Sea at the same time. And the reducing tensions should include reducing the militarization level and the denuclearization orientation. And we need to invite more active role of small states to pursue for diplomacy for peace and diplomacy for preventing conflicts. And at the same time, nuclear weapon cannot be independent from high technology weapons such as AI-based weapons. And these AI-based weapons are all led by the countries in East Asia, if we include the US being in East Asia, US, China, Japan, South Korea, Russia, etc. So we need to directly address the threats posed by nuclear plus high technology weapons. And 7, we need to avoid strategic bloc building and military alliances, which are really spreading fast in Indo-Pacific region. It's almost like seeing the U.S. strategy of making grid of alliances without using the name alliance, old name alliance. Military cooperation between different countries, NATO countries, India, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, and the main target being China and Russia. This is being realized in the region, and that's point 7 recommendation. And the number 8, we need to strengthen civil society. It's not just peace movement or security experts, which who should discuss on security matters, but it should spread out. Common security should be one of the common agenda for pro-democracy and progressive social movements. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis Dili, for this very impressive report. And with that said, I would like to ask Ryu Mu-kung, who is the International Director of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, and listen to your perspective on this report. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Oscar, and good morning and good evening. I'm Mi Kyung-woo, the International Director of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, which is one of the 2 affiliates of the ITUC in Korea. And I'd like to extend my gratitude for inviting me to speak in this important session to present the report on common security in the Indo-Pacific region. Actually, I have no role in the preparation of this report. However, this report is closely related to the agenda and practices of trade unions as important actors in the peace movement. So I will focus on how the analysis and suggestions presented in this report are connected to the activities of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, my organization, and other trade unions in the region. First of all, the report, Common Security in the Indo-Pacific region, was released at a very important time for our region and the global peace movement. With unprecedented militarization, alliance buildings, and nuclear threat rising across the Indo-Pacific, the report released in October 2024 is very, very timely. The report also provides some important framework for trade unions and workers across the Indo-Pacific region, consistent with our long-standing commitment to peace, justice, and international solidarity. Many trade unions share the report's core premise that no nation can achieve security by making other feels insecure. From opposing military blocs and military alliance to promoting civil society participations, the 8 key recommendations the report makes are already being implemented by trade unions in the region. As the report accurately analyzed, the region, the Indo-Pacific, is a potential flashpoint for catastrophic conflict. This risk is most acute on Korean Peninsula. More than 70 years after the armistice agreement, the region is still locked in a state of a technical war with more than 1 million heavily armed troops facing each other across the demilitarized zone. North Korea continued to develop its nuclear arsenal and missiles capability, launching 40 missiles in 2022 alone. Its policy now explicitly states that it will immediately launch a nuclear attack if its command is threatened. The situation has become so volatile that it has been described as strange if a war does not break out. South Korea and the United States conducted an unprecedented 109 military exercises in 2024, 275 days, which is a significant increase from the already warring 200 days of exercises in 2023. This means that training period has increased by 75 days and 52 additional exercises has been conducted compared to the previous years. Such a training now includes live fire drills that specifically simulate nuclear war and scenarios targeting China. The military alliance structure has been strengthened into 2 opposing blocs. The US, South Korea, Japan trilateral alliance is deepening, while the Russia-North Korea military alliance is intensifying. The Russia-North Korea Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty, signed in June 2024, includes a clause on automatic military intervention in the event of an emergency, effectively recreating a Cold War-style military alliance. The geopolitical situation has become more complicated with the return of Donald Trump to the presidency of the United States. This introduced profound uncertainty to already unstable region. The Trump administration's America First approach may weaken the international order while pursuing aggressive and unpredictable policies. Conservative politicians in South Korea are already responding by advocating for expanded nuclear deterrence and even direct nuclear armament for South Korea. The impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol stated in January 2023 that South Korea could pursue its own nuclear weapons if the North Korean nuclear issue worsens, a statement that could fundamentally destabilize the entire region and potentially spark a new nuclear armed race. The Biden administration's Washington Declaration on Expanded Deterrence has already increased the deployment of US strategic assets in the region. It is not yet known whether the Trump administration will maintain this commitment or pursue a dramatically different approaches, which create additional uncertainty and the potential for miscalculation. Authoritarianism, far-right populism, and militarism are spreading around the world, and South Korea is no exception. As you may know, on December 3rd of last year, former President Yoon Suk-yeol, who declared the martial law after a political standoff in which the opposition party had a majority, was ultimately impeached. Prior to this, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration sent drones to Pyongyang, the capital city of North Korea, on 3 occasions in October 2024. If North Korea has responded with a retaliatory attack, it could have immediately triggered a localized conflict or even all-out war. During the investigation of the attempted coup, it was revealed that there was a plan to deliberately provoke military actions to justify the declaration of the martial law. This was a dangerous combination of authoritarianism and militarism, and it confirmed that the struggle of defend democracy and the struggle to achieve peace are 2 sides of the same coin. As soon as the emergency martial law was declared on December 3, the KCTU members rushed to the National Assembly and fought against the martial law troops and police with their bare hands to support National Assembly so that they could pass a resolution to lift the martial law. It has been at the forefront of the fight to remove the head of the insurrection, Yoon Suk-yeol, and to defend democracy. In the process, the KCTU has held 2 general strikes. This struggle has expanded into action for peace. The KCTU has a firm stance against the war and militarism. The Article 7 of the KCTU's constitution states we will realize permanent world peace against the threats of war and nuclear weapons. In response, the KCTU is waging a campaign against the military alliance and nuclear alliance between South Korea, the US, and Japan, which are increasing military tensions and the possibility of a war on Korean Peninsula based on the recognition that peace by force is impossible. The KCTU is presenting establishing a permanent peace regime as one of our top 10 agendas for achieving a comprehensive social reform beyond the end of attempted insurrection by the former President Yoon. KCTU is also strengthening its international solidarity activities with trade unions in Japan in particular to strengthen the solidarity of workers for nuclear-free and peaceful East Asia. In particular, March 1st of this year, the KCTU participated in a Bikini Day rally on the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombing and the 71st anniversary of the hydrogen bomb test at Bikini Atoll, which was organized by the Japanese peace movement, including Ken Shikyo and Jang No-ran. The KCTU representatives, including myself, attended the rally and expressed solidarity with the Japanese trade unions and peace movement that are seeking to dramatically step up their effort to pressure the Japanese government to join the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons in the wake of the Hidankyo, the Japanese A-bomb Survivors Association's Nobel Peace Prize win, and to change the government's security policy, which has been consistently focused on increasing military spending and strengthening the deterrence of the Japan-US alliance. Especially, the US military in Japan and self-defense force will create a joint command to make the Japanese self-defense force join in more integrated way. Also, Trump administration officials asked Japan to increase the military budget to 3% of GDP. In addition, at the end of June, when the early presidential election in South Korea is completed and a new government is inaugurated, the representatives of Jang No-ran and Ken Shikyo, along with the Hidankyo and KCTU and other groups in Korea, will join together in Seoul to promote the inhumanity of nuclear weapons and the need to ratification of the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, both in Japan and Korea. In August, the KCTU and its affiliated organizations will send a delegation to the World Conference against the atomic and hydrogen bomb, which will be held in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in this August. This approach is not unique to South Korea and Japan. The Philippine labor unions organizations called Centro has also maintained a similar stance to the recommendations in the report, including no to war and the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone and the demilitarization of the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. In particular, Centro works closely with the Kilapanang ang Mga Kilusang Masa, the League of the Mass Movement, which is a coalition of the Centro itself, and the Peasants League and the World March of Women Filipinas and the Association of Environmental Movement and Youth Organizations. Together, they are promoting demilitarization and the neither Washington nor Beijing principle, which reject the forced dichotomy with any superpowers and instead advocates the independent path to peace. In Australia, trade unions have fought tirelessly for nuclear disarmament. sparked by the 1950s British nuclear test in Malalinga that devastated local indigenous communities and Australian soldiers. This painful history galvanized the union's movement anti-nuclear stance. Australian unions helped establish the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, ICAN, at Victorian Trade Hall in 2006, which successfully advocated for the 2017 UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons that came into force in 2021. The labor movement in the Indo-Pacific region recognizes that workers stand to lose the most from military conflicts and the nuclear war. As the KCTU has clearly expressed, the only way to achieve peace without nuclear weapons is through the solidarity of people around the world. The trade union movement has a special responsibility in this struggle by integrating peace activities into the core trade union activities and building international solidarities and mobilizing our members. We can become a decisive force for the achieving peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Myukung, for this sharing of the importance of the trade union to be at the table when negotiating peace and common security. With that said, I also want to thank all the speakers for your interventions and your contributions. And I will introduce to you Sean Connor from IPB and my colleague Danielle, who will lead the Q&A session. So with that said, thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's here with us today. Just to briefly mention at the start here, of course, today is the first of our two-day conference program. Today is the pre-conference session, sort of to catch up to speed with where things are at now. So the session we have now is a Q&A. It is not a general comments or discussion for action session, but we do have that tomorrow, and we hope you will be able to join us for that discussion where we all together will plan how we can move forward. For now, though, we do have about 20 minutes left here in our session for any questions that participants may have for the speakers that we have heard from. And we do have some speakers online who were earlier on by video. So if you have questions for any of the speakers, we welcome that. Just a few basic rules before we start. Given the short time that we have, we will ask you to keep your questions to a maximum of 2 minutes. If you can have your comments shorter than 2 minutes, that's even better. But when not possible, 2 minutes will be the max, and we will mute microphones after 2 minutes in order to have fairness for all those who have questions to ask. You can either ask your questions in the chat, which of course then we hope will be less than 2 minutes, or you can raise your hand and we will unmute you that way. Please make sure with your questions, if you disagree with points, that you be polite with your disagreements, and to speak slowly if you're speaking so that the interpreters can make sure that your questions are interpreted for all the participants. We will take 3 questions now and then turn the floor over to the speakers. If your question is to a specific speaker, please specify who, or if it's a general question for anyone to answer. With that in mind, I do see a few questions in the chat as well as one hand up. So I think these are, if I'm correct, 3 questions that we can start with. We have a longer one from Arthur. I will try to read it quickly here. Given the concrete examples of how workers are intervening from below to try to stop ongoing conflicts such as the Gaza genocide with solidarity or boycott actions, please give concrete examples. Second question is, how far is the new wave of rearmament in the US and Europe being pushed by big arms companies? And the third one specifically for Ryo Mikyung is, how do you judge the threat that the election of Trump poses to the Korean Peninsula, and what action would you like to see from the workers around the world if war becomes likely? We then have a question from Isaiah that asks, how is the strategy for global solidarity for peace? I think this one will come in more tomorrow, but you're welcome to give some ideas if you have some. And then finally, I see the hand up from Mohammed, and the name is cut off, so I can't read the full name, but I think you have a question, so I will ask you to unmute, and then you have 2 minutes for your question, please.
شكرا للجميع وأشكر كل المتحدثين الذين سبقوني على كل التقارير والمعلومات الرائعة. السؤال هو: هل الاتحادات والنقابات عضوة فاعلة في دائرة صنع القرار؟ وشكرا.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and thank you for keeping your question succinct, but also very good questions. So we have all of our speakers who are welcome to respond. Perhaps Mi-kyung, if you wouldn't mind going first, since there was a question directed directly towards you, and you're welcome to answer that and any of the other questions. And then any of the other speakers who may want to answer, you're welcome to add in. Mi-kyung, please go ahead.
Thank you for the question, but it's very difficult to give concrete answers because the policies or position of the Trump administration is really unpredictable, or some people saying that it's like natural disasters. We can predict, we can forecast, but we can predict. So it's very difficult. And many people want to believe that Trump has a big experience to open up a dialogue with the North Korea leader Kim Jong-un some years ago, but it failed. But it is likely that in one hand, he's imposing a kind of unprecedented tariff war against all the former close allies of the US. And at the same time with this, he is leveraging for negotiation, especially how much they can increase the contribution of the share of the defense costs, and taking a more active role in the US strategy in the midst of the strategic rivalry between US and China. So I don't have any clear answer what is the Trump administration position on especially the US North Korea relation, and I think some other colleagues here can give more concrete answers on this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mi-kyung. I think, does anyone else have comments of our speakers? I'm trying to look through the speakers, but please, if you do want to answer any of the questions, you're welcome as the speakers to unmute yourself and to come in. Philip?
Yeah, thank you. Am I coming through?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay, good. I think I'd like to thank everybody for the questions and also for the contributions that are made. And it is clear that all those concerned with today's events, Labour, Olof Palme, and the Peace Bureau, are trying to build momentum, to try to build a much broader base of support to get an alternative agenda out there. And I think that is significant. And what I would like to see is, as the discussions unfold, is to look at the operationalization beyond the concepts of how we make this work in practice. We have seen from all regions contributions with respect to superpower rivalry, with respect to rearmament, with respect to the conversation of conflict and of militarization, all underwritten by the rise of autocratic thinking and practice. So the Palme message to us was, without us, we don't shift the dial. With us, we have a chance to shift the dial. And I hope, therefore, this is a beginning of a new beginning in this process. I think it was Eisenhower that warned us about the military industry complex. It is raging at the moment. The CIPRI report will be coming out in just a few weeks' time, and I am confident that world expenditure on the military will break all previous records and by a significant margin. In that, we have a moment where a rebirth of a new nuclear weapon age. They call it enhancement, but basically heavy investment. I think 384 billion in the last couple of years, according to ICANN, into enhancing the power of nuclear weapons. And as Guterres has told us, we've been saved by luck. And he says luck is not a strategy. The military industry complex must be in a it's a fantasy world for them that has become true with the level of investment that we see. The labor movement has been very clear, in my experience, a two-state solution, recognizing the democratic rights of Palestine. We have called organized demonstrations around the world in support of the Palestinian cause. We have criticized the arms transfers and the arms trade, which fuels the ability of Israel to bomb and maim citizens in Gaza. At the same token, we criticize the murder of over 1,000 Israelis in October of last year. We have to hold firm with respect to the two-state solution and also hold people to account. And I know unions around the world have supported the International Criminal Court decision about the war crimes that have been committed and the prosecution of those responsible for them. We have a massive challenge in front of us, and we have to meet that challenge. And I hope that what we've done today and in the following days will give us the confidence and the hope and the experience, and above all, the practical examples that we can change things, and we will change things. I don't know if I've answered the questions. The questions were quite general, so that was a bit of a general answer. Forgive me.
Thank you, Philip. And I think it's fine to have also those general answers to help us imagine a little bit beyond the framework of our discussion today, what else is related to it. So thank you for that. Would any of our other speakers like to weigh in? Cecilia, Francis, Christian, Omar? If so, please just unmute yourself and you're welcome to continue.
I just want to add that using your voice is what we need, that we need visibility. And we're very concerned about the invisibility of solidarity actors. They are not in the media. They are not present. Many young people have no idea that any of your groups exist. They would love to engage. They just don't know about you. So you need to take presence in social media, on the streets, everywhere, and use the word peace, because I cannot accept that all of a sudden peace has become some dirty word that nobody wants to mention because they feel it's capitulating to the other side. I don't know how it happened. Peace is a universal value in the UN Charter. It has to be defended, and it should be made central to all of our actions. And I know that young people are dying to engage. They just don't know where to go. So please show them the road.
Okay.
And just to complement a very short comment, that always remember that ordinary people has an extraordinary impact. That's the main message that comes to me at this time, that we need everyone. It's about people. It's not about the leaders. It's the ordinary people that can make the real change.
I must say, if I can add something to attract the youth, we are in big discussions about, remember Live Aid from 40 years ago? We're trying to do something on live peace. We have conversations taking place across the Atlantic. We started small, but the idea will be that we will have something on live peace to gather all those young people, and then they will find the magnet. They will find the music. They will find their voice and find the organizations. And we're working on this now. I hope we can get it done in the next year.
And just wanted to add, in times of crisis and conflict, especially what we see the heightened crisis in the Horn of Africa, where there are so many conflicts now in Sudan, in South Sudan, in parts of Ethiopia and Somalia, we see that the weakness of the multilateral institutions to come in and address, most specifically the United Nations, the UN Security Council, becoming toothless and not interested about the crisis and the conflicts that are happening in several parts in Africa, be it in the Horn, be it in Sahel, in West Africa. And that is why we as trade unionists believe that it's time to heighten our acts of solidarity, put pressure on our multilateral institutions like the African Union, like regional economic communities like IGAT and East Africa Community and ECOWAS. And we truly mean what we call African solutions to African problems, because it's no longer valid for us that we wait the legitimacy of the multilateral institutions to step in and bring as a means of resolving crisis. So we feel that we should not be waiting. We should be pressurizing the African Union and its member states that with the change that's happening in Washington, it's time for us to pull up our socks and address the crisis in our backyards.
Thank you all so much. I wanted to check if one of our introductory speakers, Jordania, would like to add in any comment on the role of unions having a permanent seat on the table. Otherwise, Jordania, are you there? Otherwise, we can continue on with a few more questions. Quickly, we are running low on time, but Danielle, if you would like to maybe add in.
Yes, I would. Hello, everybody. I would like to give the word to Rayur. You had a question? Or are you not with us anymore, maybe? So then I'm trying to follow here. It goes fast in the chat. We had a question from Esayaha about the nuclear age being a new political power. Do we believe an alternative system is needed urgently? I think I answer for all if I say yes, but does anyone want to develop a little bit on that? And then I will give the word to Teresa. Or maybe I should take Teresa's question too, so we have 3 questions, or 2 at least. Teresa El Amin, and then
Hello.
maybe yes. Oh, is it?
Thank you. I am so grateful for this first session on common security. I'm in Columbus, Georgia, in the United States, and my question is about solidarity, international solidarity with a powerful international peace bureau in many, many countries. None of us are free until the Palestinians are free. We must do more in the mass movement building. The campuses in the United States are on fire in support of the Palestinians. The young people are leading. We don't need to spoon feed them. They're leading. So what can we do internationally in all the countries in support of the Palestinian cause?
Thank you, Teresa. Rayura, I see that you're back. I give you, if you can be super short, and then Shell, and then I think, I mean, that would be the last question we can take, and whoever can stay on to hear the answers, it would be great.
My name is Ghayur Akhtar from Pakistan, and I am the chairman of All Pakistan Civil Transport Worker Union. So my suggestion is this: ITUC should take a great. ITUC is a. I am very thankful to you. ITUC take a great step up about the peace, and also ITUC officially announced the campaign of peaceful world for peace and should and every union take social media through drive the campaign through social media, and every union which are affiliated with ITUC, they are create a content on social media about the peaceful world and condemn the every country which are which are doing the cruel. Shukriya.
Thank you. Shell, I'm giving you the floor. Then we must take the answers, and if we have time, we will take Nathaniel too.
I just want to point out that security without economic development is not possible. I want to ask about the ideas from the Bandung Conference 1955 and Colombo in 1976 that really stressed that to have a peaceful development in the world, it must also be about economic development. That I think is discussed too little, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to start? So we have the question about international solidarity, specifically connected to the Gaza, what's going on in Gaza. We also have the question about ITUC's role, and maybe then we can get an answer also from Mohammed's question in the beginning, connected to the labor, the unions and the labor movement's role, whether or not it's a permanent member in decision making that Mohammed asked before. And then Shell's question about the economic development and the connection with peace work. Who would like to start? No one feels very directly
Me.
involved. Yes.
Well, I can
Yeah.
just say that the special rapporteurs have been acting in response to the situation of the American students, acting in favor of showing solidarity for Palestine. So we have issued press releases. Unfortunately, the response from the U.S. government has not been at all something that has led to an improvement in the situation. So we continue to express our openness to cooperating with the students in terms of addressing the very real interests they have, but not just of the situation of the Palestinians, but the very many human rights abuses that the students themselves are facing, which range from deportation to denial of their right to graduate. I mean, the list goes on. And of course, the fundamental violation of the right to freedom of expression and assembly. So we are definitely on board. Unfortunately, like I'm saying, like all of you have pointed out, there you cannot have an overly optimistic expectation of what the UN can do. And so, as Omar pointed out, that going to realistically a lower level of engagement is more likely to get an actual resolution. It can't be from the top down, it has to be from the bottom up.
Thank you. Jordania, would you like to say something about ITUC's role?
Bien. Breve, quisiera hacer dos puntualizaciones. Primero, respecto a el tema de la solidaridad internacional. En el caso del movimiento sindical, hemos estado muy de cerca a países en conflicto, hemos estado en nuestras campañas, hemos visibilizado situaciones que por lo general quizás no llegan a todo el mundo y la idea es que situaciones de crisis tan complejas, de conflictos, pues entre todos y todas podamos poner nuestro granito de arena, pero que la gente sepa qué está pasando, que la gente sepa cuál es la situación que se está viviendo en diferentes partes del mundo. Y en el caso específico de Palestina, ahora en el año pasado, en 2024, la CCI junto a otros sindicatos globales dirigió una misión y fuimos. Yo tuve la oportunidad de estar en Palestina junto a nuestros afiliados y afiliadas para ver cuál era la situación, pero sobre todo para decir presente, para decir que el movimiento sindical se solidariza con la situación que están viviendo nuestros compañeros y compañeras, la gente, la población, y que necesitamos entre todos y todas buscar esa salida que ya antes nos hemos pronunciado en reiteradas ocasiones como CCI respecto al cese al fuego, respecto a los más de 200.000 trabajadores que han perdido sus empleos y no tienen sus garantías. Hemos llevado estos casos a la Organización Internacional del Trabajo. Hemos estado ahí siguiendo de cerca cuál es la situación, pero sobre todo cómo podemos encontrar algunas salidas, aparte de dar ese soporte necesario que necesitan nuestros compañeros y compañeras. Es importante, pues, la construcción de esa paz y de esa salida al conflicto con una visión sindical, sabiendo las agresiones directas, y aquí quiero hacer un énfasis porque lo he escuchado en varias intervenciones, el impacto que se hace directo a las trabajadoras y los trabajadores, pero en específico lo indirecto y directo a las mujeres, el impacto que no todo el mundo ve, que pasa por los conflictos armados y que las mujeres pues les golpea de manera fuerte y de frente. También lo hemos visibilizado desde el movimiento sindical, este impacto y este afecto que pasa constantemente dentro de estos conflictos. Y por último, decir que es un tema tan crucial dentro de nuestro movimiento que en nuestro último Consejo General debatimos sobre un documento por la paz. Hablábamos incluso de los esfuerzos que hemos hecho junto a estas dos organizaciones que nos acompañan en esta actividad, en la construcción de esta actividad, y hemos debatido, porque no todo el mundo tiene una misma visión de paz, pero sí sabemos que hay una gran necesidad, por lo difícil que está el mundo, por lo complicado de la situación, hay una gran necesidad de unidad real, de ceder en algunos espacios para que podamos avanzar a un mundo verdaderamente libre de conflictos, libre de guerras. Y por último, ahora sí mencionar que el movimiento sindical ha estado en diferentes espacios, aparte de la campaña, de la promoción de estas campañas, que lo hemos hecho antes, no es la primera vez, ahora simplemente vamos a hacer una especie de relanzamiento. Hemos estado en espacios que debaten el cese de armas nucleares, los espacios que tienen que ver con el tratado de la eliminación de armas nucleares. Ahí ha estado el movimiento sindical y va a seguir estando, porque como decía al principio en mis palabras de introducción, es más necesario que nunca seguir luchando por la paz. Y de estos escenarios, el movimiento sindical no puede ni debe estar fuera ni lo va a estar, porque nos afecta a la población, a los pueblos del mundo, y dentro de los pueblos del mundo están las trabajadoras y los trabajadores que día a día se levantan a luchar por sus familias, por el pan, y que estos conflictos pues los neutralizan y no les permite avanzar. Así que solamente quería resaltar esos dos puntos y agradecerles el tiempo y el escucharnos.
We had also a comment about dock workers trying to stop arms delivery, for example, to I think Israeli was. So there are unions and workers can definitely unite and be strong together. I don't know, Sean, what do you say? I mean, is it possible to take a few of the questions, or should we encourage people instead to come on tomorrow?
Yeah.
The conference continues tomorrow, so please keep your questions until then, and we will have hopefully a bit of a longer discussion session tomorrow, where we actually discuss the concrete steps that we can take together. And
please also, you're welcome to send us an email with any questions you may have, so we could pass those on to the speakers from today's session. I just want to give a closing word of thanks to the interpreters for our session today, especially for staying on a little bit later for the closing of the session, but I think also for their sake and their rest. we'll close the session for today. So thank you all very much. And Danielle, if you have any final words to say here as well.
Thank you very much. My final words will be log in tomorrow. I saw also a comment about talking about Africa specifically. For example, tomorrow we will have breakout sessions for very many regions of the world. So if you want to dig deeper into what can be done in different regions, log in tomorrow and discuss in those regional discussions. Thank you.